We're here to help your organization find the best co-op students. Our program offers flexible options of 4, 8, or 12-month work terms, allowing you to choose a duration that best suits your organization. All you need to do is send us the job description, choose your favorite candidates, and conduct interviews. We'll promote the jobs to our students, organize the interview details, coordinate the offers, and handle the rest. Whether you are looking to hire students or learn more about the benefits of co-op, we are here to help.
Hello and welcome. My name is Faz. I'm the president of DX3 and I welcome you to DX3 Pulse. DX3 Pulse is our regular and timely insights that are shared by biggest and brightest names in the industry focused on the retail and marketing industry. And I'm really excited today to welcome a friend of the business, Ronnie Malewski. He's the managing director of NPD Canada. Welcome, Ronnie. How are you doing?
I'm good. I am. A friend is right. And thank you so much for having me here. I'm humbled to be able to speak with you today.
So Ronnie is the managing director of NPD Canada, leading their expansion into Canada. He has more than 18 years of experience in digital marketing. Having spent his career prior at WPP and Dentsu, he's helped both small to medium businesses and enterprise brands grow their business. He's worked with major brands like Adidas, Coca-Cola, General Motors, Loblaws, and Microsoft. Ron is also involved in the local marketing community as a speaker, mentor, and chairperson for community work. He's a proud father and husband and investor in various startups. Welcome, Ronnie.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to know a little bit more in terms of your journey. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and then the agency that you're building and how did that come about?
Yeah, great. I mean, look, I worked for the big holding companies, both WPP and Dentsu for 17 years. I learned how to work with big brands. I worked with the best talent, not only in Canada, but worldwide. And I was fortunate enough to work with some of the world's biggest advertisers, Coca-Cola, GM, Microsoft, Mondelez. And I think after that experience, I had a yearning to do things a bit different, to take all the things I've loved from that experience fast, but do it in a faster and better, more enjoyable way for both myself and employees. And so I was lucky enough to find the perfect experience. I'm very humble for that. I had been following Neil Patel and his agency in the US. They had one fastest growing independent agency of the year. They were eyeing global expansion, but they decided to do it a bit different. They decided to make an investment into talent and not just, pure agency acquisition. And I think this is how you build an agency from the ground up. So I quit being the head of iProspect with tons of direct reports to being, the next day, the first employee in Canada, and alone with my computer. And 1.5 years later, we're 25 employees across Canada. And not only are we growing, we're doing exceptional work for our clients, which I think truly matters. And I learned that there's a simple math to building a good agency. And I think it also applies, for a good company. And it's not about, stating this on a podcast or writing it on the wall. I think it's truly living it, that company equals people times culture times focus. And so you hire the right people, you foster the right culture, and you keep the team focused. And that's what we're doing. We're independently owned for marketers. We're free of private equity and holding companies in public markets. We give away technology. We provide thought leadership, and we invest ahead of revenue. So I can go on a little bit about that. I'm really passionate about it, but that's kind of sums it all up.
Well, so that's great in terms of knowing what the company is and what it stands for. And it sounds an amazing place to be at. And then I'm glad that you are taking leadership in that role and you're growing that business. So tell us a little bit more about sort of running a business as a business leader. As you said, you were the first one, and then now it's like 25 people. The business is growing. You guys are signing more clients. So share a little bit more about sort of move from where you were previously to being a leader in the business.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the idea of people, culture, and focus, and I think that's exactly it. The first thing that I looked at was what are we doing? We're doing marketing. We're working for brands that are coming to us, that are spending this money, that care about growing their brand, and so we put that at the heart. We got the best talent that we possibly can find, instead of worrying about shareholders and anything internal, making a lot of the stuff, that we write on the walls as our values being outward focusing. It was inward focusing, right? What do we want to stand for? We want to think big. Like in today's competitive market, we're not going to get ahead by doing the same thing as everyone else, right? So we need to think big for our clients. We need to think big for ourselves. And the other thing is own it. Like none of this matters if we don't drive results. So owning it, I think, played a key role in our employee autonomy, like building a skill set within your role, carving your career path, and exercising responsibility and accountability. And then the last is like, if you know me, Vaz, have fun. Like our job should be something we look forward to do, and rather, simply a responsibility. And I found that a lot of people at some of the holding companies that left, they didn't leave because they said they were overworked. It wasn't that they were overworked. They were put on too many accounts, and then they can't do a great job for their clients. And they have pride in that work that they do, right? And so it's really not the overworked, it's the ability to do a really good job for your clients. So we just made those, the everything combo of, people who knew that, the right skill, and people who want to be able to build what, truly marketing, none of the other distractions and internal stuff. Fully, they got into marketing because they loved helping companies and marketing, and we spent all their time on that, and that's been our focus. So,
oh, that's great. I mean, that's absolutely refreshing to hear, and you do want to bring in people who are excited and passionate about what they want to do, rather than just showing up as, oh, well, this is my job and I got to go through the day to day.
yeah.
That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about what do you think are sort of the major challenges the industry is facing today?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. The first I think I could say is, do you remember Where's Waldo? You had to, find out where's Waldo in a slew of people, right? And you kind of like took your finger and you ended up finding it. It's a bit challenging, but I think with content growing exponentially in AI, and I think everyone is Waldo. Everybody's Waldo. So how do you stand out? Right? And I think there's a need for authenticity. And so in my opinion, the winners are going to learn how to mix creative and media together to properly stand out. That's number one. I think number two is what we're measuring and how we can measure is really changing. So think of like when, Google's new search experience rolls out in Canada. And even now before, when a customer gets the answer to their question without clicking on your site, and when they go from clicks to conversations, like what impact does that play on your brand? How do you determine what's working? And I think it takes a new way of thinking. And Faz is a, old school marketer, I think it takes me back to Byron Sharp. And this, like the biggest challenge I see with the companies that we work with is that today's advertising really only affects sales in years to come, not next week. So it's crazy to me how many people and CMOs that don't get this, right? They say that half of the sales that effective advertising is long-term. And I think this is a serious, underestimate. 90% is a little bit more typical. So let me explain. This month's sales are really largely due to work done many years ago in building mental and physical availability for the brand. And I think likewise, most of the effect of current advertising is spread thinly way into the future. So advertising is really different from activation efforts to capture your share of the category buyers, right? Paid search, in-store promotions, display, turn them off, and straight away you're gonna see the full effect these activations were having on your sales. It's like closing the doors of a store, right? But in contrast, if you turn off advertising, then next month's sales are gonna be the same as they would have been, and the decline will only occur slowly over years. And I think people mistake this, and I think that that means next week only 1 or 2% of your customers are in the market. The addressable market is actually only 5% of people that are actually in your category. Think how many people are actually in the category for your brand. So it's impossible for much of the advertising effect to be immediate. And I think too often we sit in these sales calls and we try and look at like, what did we do last week that will affect this week? And it's very short-sighted. And then the last thing I would say is a lot of brands or companies haven't figured out how to work with agencies. And this guy, Jared Belsky, who I've come across, I think he's fantastic. He surveyed 100 CMOs and he found out that 86% were never trained on how to manage an agency, right? So in the end, agencies have only two types of clients, right? There are clients where the best agency talent runs to be on that team. And there are clients where everyone at the agency runs away from that opportunity. And I think that gap is all the difference, motivated and great. And so if a client's ledger and single largest expense is an agency, then why, if the investment is so large and critical, does our industry allow there to be this general path for people to just manage via instinct? So I think that's kind of some of the challenges that I see.
That's fantastic. So I mean, are you guys having those conversations with clients in terms of advertising and activation?
We are, and it's so interesting to see the ones. It takes a lot of work, but we see a lot of it, specifically lead gen, e-commerce, the pressure they're on, right? I think deep down they understand it, but they're in this pressure. We need to impact things. Things are going on sideways. We need more sales, and again, physical availability and mental availability. They're two different things. It's our job to kind of teach them. And look, yes, you can squeeze a lot of lemon out of the juice. There are ways that your campaigns, whether it's paid search or display, can be better than others. You need to be experimenting. You need to be testing things, and you need to be able to, provide what kind of budget can you spend? What's the law of diminishing returns? That's consultation. That's an agency. But also understanding the maximum amount of people that are in market for your category, versus brand building. It's an age-old question, but people are, I find brands are still not always getting that. The good ones do. And those are the ones that stay.
If I'm not mistaken, the NPD, NPD Digital Canada started during COVID. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so it did start right, I would say, a year and a half ago. So right after COVID. I don't think it would have been possible to do this, pre-COVID, if it wasn't for understanding how you can build an agency from the ground up without an office. Luckily we have one now, but I mean, that would never have happened. So absolutely.
So how's that experience? I mean, first of all, I think it's really, really bold to start at that time because there was so much uncertainty in the market. And also the first kind of push that went e-commerce and everything online had already occurred in sort of second half of 2020, first quarter of 2021. So how was that experience of starting at that time? And then now that we are back to somewhat normal business environment, albeit almost entering recession now. So how's that been? How has that experience been?
I think COVID was tough. A lot of people suffered. There was a lot of tragedy. On the other beautiful side of it, I think people reevaluated. I think people know this already. They don't hear from me, but they reevaluated, their life and what was possible and things that weren't possible before were, and it opened up a whole new side of business. So I think on a personal side, it proved something to me that I already know, right? Good people who make good places. And how many companies went into shelter mode, furlough, scared of profits over people? Then they realized, oh, wait, I need to get people happy when it becomes the employer who woke up and decided that for some people, wealth is not just about money, but the freedom to do what they love, to not have to sacrifice family time, and that we can actually achieve work success without compromising our personal passions and our family. And now we're seeing a slight reversal, as we again kind of enter a slowdown. And that's unfortunate. But on the marketing side, I think it flipped everything on its head. How do you analyze historical data? You can't look at COVID. It affected everybody different. What about post-COVID, right? So I think brands had to understand their role, also another area in social and political issues like never before. What do they stand for? So I mean, the impact of COVID is, not only from the employee side, but from the brand side to what the teams look like. It's definitely got everybody reflecting and has changed things. And I personally think for the good overall, asking the right questions.
I mean, it is such a true thing that you mentioned. Like we have the exact same challenge at DX3 that when I talk to people about DX3, I'm like, here are the numbers before COVID. And then here we are now, but then it was such a big moment in the industry that you can't say, well, it was basically the next 2 years. No, it was completely separate sort of circumstances, but it is something that you have to go through and you have to sort of explain that why it is what it is. What do you think, in your opinion, are the challenges your industry is facing in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think we have a serious attribution problem. I think there's tools like Helios, Wicked Reports, Triple Whale that can help solve this, but I think it's complex. It's not plug and play. I think the average company isn't using this, and I think brands still have no idea what's working. So there's data overload, and they know about all these AI tools, but at the end of the day, very few truly really understand what is working and what is not. And it's not easy. Solving it isn't easy. And I think it's different for everyone in different categories in the makeup of their team. I think we have to be able to make measurement work to its fullest potential. But I think with the data that we have, but I think that we also have to fill in the gaps with basic marketing principles that go beyond short-term activations, as I mentioned. So I would say that's a big one. I think creative is going to be a big focus. Good creative, that sparks emotion, that's genuine, that's paired with the right channel and the right message. So, think about this, 5% of your addressable market in market to buy your category, let alone your brand, like telling good stories to the right customer and the right time is going to be a challenge. And I think people are going to have to get that right. Brands are going to have to get that right. And then I think a lot of companies can leverage AI by themselves and that they don't need partners. And I think we've seen this to be wrong. I think everybody has to experiment and adopt AI within the workplace, within a company and a brand, but also know how to leverage the experts. AI is a tool. It's not a magic wand, right? It can help speed things up and make us more efficient, but it's a skill. And just like any tool, you need experts to master it. So I think there's that. And then the last thing I'll say is I think one of the challenges that brands are they're too focused on immediate sales and they forget about the peak end rule, right? Neil Patel actually talks a lot about this. It's a psychological heuristic in which people judge an experience largely based on how they felt at its peak, right? At its most intense point, likely when they bought something, and then at its end, rather based on the total summer average of every moment of that experience. And how many people are in it just to get that sale and they forget about the end part of the rule. And yes, they talk about loyalty, but loyalty almost seems like how do they get that customer back? Not how do they enhance the user experience and make them understand that they're also going to judge the experience on how they feel at the end. I see so many times that we do audits and user experience, it all ends at the checkout. And then an email after a few days later, here, there, in a workflow, but never really caring about the customer at the end of its journey, truly caring about it, not just wanting it back to buy. So I think that's another challenge. But look, I can go on and on about challenges, that's for sure.
I want to explore a couple of things you mentioned in terms of the attribution and AI. But before I do that, so if I understand correctly from the loyalty side, what you're saying is that right now, the way loyalty is designed is for the benefit of the organization. That I want to know how my customers feel about me. And that to me means when do I get them back to do another transaction with me? Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily design from a customer perspective to take into account, okay, how was your experience of the product? How did you actually feel about it? Did it actually help you enhance your life? Did it make a difference to you?
100%. I think people they talk about loyalty, but they go through the motions. They ask for some customer feedback here. They make sure they get the right shipping. They're good with the quick returns. I think they make strides in it, but I don't think they put as much attention into the after purchase as they do before in every single thing they do. And I always go back to this brand. There's this brand that was on Shark Tank. It's called PRX Performance. I purchased from them. They buy equipment that you can put into your house that you can hang, expensive equipment. And I've never seen a brand work like this, where I made a big purchase from this coming from the US. It's shipping to my house. And they send me an email, a video from the founder. They told me every single day in an email when it's coming. They gave me a PDF that I can print out and blow out for my instructions. At 6 a.m., they said, your package is coming today. Here again are all the things that you need in one email because we've sent you a few. They followed up on aftercare. They asked me for my phone number to see if they can call me. They asked me for videos after. They just went and put all the effort into the aftercare service as they did to get my business. And I don't think enough brands are doing that. Enough companies are doing that.
That's fantastic. So you had mentioned a little bit about AI. So what do you think is sort of the role of AI and the impact it's having or will have on marketing? So what are your thoughts on AI within sort of the marketing and advertising segment?
Yeah, I think there are decades when nothing happens. And then there's weeks when decades happen, right? And I think that's the case with AI. I think it has everyone in a frenzy. We're sifting out the use cases. But this time it's not something like voice search that ended up only having a few, right? Siri, set the timer for X, right? Alexa, tell me the weather today. There was only a few things that kind of came from that. But this AI is not that. It's been democratized, and the user experience in the front end to use these tools is exceptional. So it's totally leveled the playing
Yep.
field. But it's also easy to get overwhelmed with. And I think you got to go back to the use cases in your business. And I've been telling my team that not to get overwhelmed. Just keep focusing on, getting better at it, but the use cases. What are we trying to achieve with it, right? So there's a few ways, like I can speak to it from a marketing concept. I think it becomes way too large when we talk about it from outside of that. The way that we're using it is like, and the number one way I'm seeing people using it is content. And
Yep.
it's so easy for content and it's good for content, but we have to understand that there's a specific way to use it, right? When, like I talked a lot about, we talked about Where's Waldo and putting out the same content and actually some of the factual mistakes with it. It has to be done and used in the right way. And we have a whole entire training process on, how do we get personal quotes in there? How do we get feedback? How do we fact check it? How do we get the right content length? How do we add value, add something new? How do we have human written and expert and AI written together? So I think a lot of people, are using content for it, but they're not using it in the right way. They're simply putting in some prompts to churn out a lot of pieces of category content. I think concept building is amazing. It brings your ideas to life in seconds. We can create creative concepts and then draw them out. We used to have an art director that would have to go build it all. We can have mood boards. We can have anything we want in seconds. So I think give it one more year. It's going to create long form videos flawlessly, right? And I always say people overestimate what AI can do for them in the short run, but I think they underestimated what it can do for them in the long run. And so some other cases that we're using is design variations and A/B testing. It's amazing for that. Interpreting data. You can use ChatGPT Code Interpreter. And if you look at, okay, what is the marketing spend on Google in the US? It was $160 billion on Google Ads. How much wastage is there? If you can then analyze your campaigns faster, how much money can you save, right? Tell me what my LTV is. I don't need to do a manually RFM analysis. Then you have language and translation. It goes on. I think it will also drastically improve the shopping experience, right? As it starts to integrate, it can see people through walls through Wi-Fi, right? Imagine what local stores and supermarkets could do with this technology and how to understand shopping behavior. So there's so many ways to use it. I think you got to find a few that are going to work for your business and make sure it's impactful for the customer, and then have some time to test everything else out that is next in line, is my advice.
That is actually so true. I mean, it is being used primarily right now because it's probably the earlier adopters were content, but you're right. Like it can do so much in analytics. It can do so much in sort of product side of things and customer service, user experience. There's so much that is, the potential is there to actually revolutionize the whole user experience segment part of it. Well, I did want to ask you in terms of sort of, because that's what you guys do day in and day out, which is paid search and paid strategy. So how are you using it? What's your advice in terms of the paid campaigns and paid search?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of rules for AI. I always say, like, be transparent about the use of AI. We're fully transparent of where we use it, and this goes for companies as well. Use AI to enhance human touch, not replace it. And then last, I'd say focus on creating value for customers. So we always have those rules in the way that we use it. From a performance angle, we're using it for not just doing things faster, but just, that's one thing, but just doing things, tapping into so many tools and bring them into spreadsheets. We're doing our keyword research that we can do through it, but then we pass it through. We have rules in the way that we're building it. We're not just trying to do things faster and quicker. There's so much enrichment in some of these tools. You can start asking it back for feedback. You need to go that next level and be able to use it and say, hey, I have this robot. I have a machine next to me. I can get it to do anything I want. And that's kind of the mindset that we take, and a lot of experimentation, but again, keeping our focus on what we're doing, right? And I think a lot of people with more data, they don't know how to tell the story. So we have to be careful going there. They have all this data and all these spreadsheets that they're able to do very quickly, but we're also teaching our team the fundamental that, it's really the data tells, and it's the stories that sell.
Yep. So, I mean, we are just about at the end of this conversation. So, I wanted to ask you, like, what's your advice to listeners? What would you want our sort of audience to take away from this?
Yeah, well, we touched on a lot of subjects, that's for sure. I think I'll give some general advice I'd like to give. There was some advice that was given to me that I thought changed my career, and I think it works in what you've heard from me a little bit about my story and how I started the agency. And I think it's that we sort of think that like no company and no person, whether it's a manager or your direct report, is in control of your career but you. And I think it's easy to get stuck sometimes in, I need this paycheck, or, I need to work on this, or this is very stable for me. Nobody controls that. You do. Your experimentation, your learning, your curiosity, your creative, your bold moves. Nobody is in control of your career but you. And you have to remember that even when you go in, you have a bad day, and you think that, you need to work for this company or this manager. Think of that. Think about that. It's your career and you can do anything you want with it, whether that's in your spare time or whether you need to make a bold move or you need to voice your opinion. That was really, sound advice that I think was given to me that a lot of people need to hear sometimes.
That's great. Well, Ronnie, thanks a lot for your time. For the latest updates, subscribe to our channels linked below. You can also visit us at dx3canada.com. It will help you keep updated with our content and engage with us and interact